Sherry, are you on? You are on because I see your screen.
Yes, hello.
Yes, it seems to be working. You've got the data call.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks good.
And there's the forms
Yep. Yep.
and the instructions.
Forms and the instructions, and at some point I'll ask you go up to there's a link to the ISO website. Yeah, the
Right
trip.
here.
Yeah. So when we
Mhm.
get to that part, I'll just ask you to click through to that and just to show, that it works. So,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
already clicked through, so it works.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. Good, good,
Okay.
good. All
All
right.
right.
Are we
Thank you.
recording? Are we actually recording already?
Yes, we're recording already, and then as soon as the captions are on right now, so you ought to be
Yep.
able to see that.
I see that you've enabled closed captioning. I actually can't see any captions.
I think you have to click your button for the
Oh,
closed captioning.
I see. Show captions. Oh, I don't really want to see the captions. So,
Okay. Okay.
uh,
Yeah,
yep.
that's critical this year.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. No,
Thank
all
you.
looks good. All right.
Thanks.
So, thank you.
All right. See you
All
in a
right.
bit.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Just a quick note for everyone. I know it's just about 12 o'clock now, but folks are really starting to just join right now. So we'll probably give it uh, a couple minutes just to make sure everybody gets in. Just so no one thinks we've forgotten about you, we're still admitting folks to the webinar. We will start at 12:05, regardless of the status of people still joining at that point. Okay, everyone, it's about 5 minutes after 12. Let's go ahead and get started. Sherry, I see we've got the recording going, which everybody probably should have acknowledged. This will be, it obviously is being recorded and will be posted, or a link to it will be posted on the TRIP website at some point, hopefully not too long after the webinars are concluded. It actually ends up on the Treasury's YouTube site, which is where these things get put. So in any event, let's get going. Welcome, everyone. This is Richard Ift with the Federal Insurance Office. I am joined today by my colleagues, Sherry Roulette, Annette Burris, and Ted Newman, also of FIO. Also with us today are Mike McCauley of ISO, who is directing the collection of and aggregation of the data through the portal operated by ISO on behalf of U.S. Treasury. Also on the line is Aaron Brandenburg of the NAIC, which is coordinating the effort from the standpoint of the state insurance regulators. Again, the purpose of this data call, it is required by Section 111 of the 2015 TRIP Reauthorization Act, which has been codified as Section 104H1 of TRIA. It is designed to provide Treasury with a data set that it uses to periodically analyze, among other things, the effectiveness of the terrorism risk insurance program, as well as the competitiveness of small insurers in the terrorism risk insurance marketplace. State regulators have determined to collect similar information for the regulatory purposes addressed by state regulators with respect to insurers under their supervision. Treasury and state regulators are continuing to coordinate in this effort with a consolidated approach that allows reporting insurers to provide the same data set to Treasury through the ISO portal and to state regulators through a portal operated by New York State, and thereby satisfy their production obligations to both through the provision of the same data to each. And we'll go over that in a little more detail a little further into the webinar. The regulatory due date for the annual data call is May 15, which was set in light of FIO's statutory obligation to provide a report to Congress concerning the program each year on June 30th. This year, that report focuses upon the effectiveness of the terrorism risk insurance program. If you would like to provide comments on the subject of that study, we did publish in the Federal Register a notice on March 11th, the same day as the notice announcing the commencement of the data call was published. And that notice seeking comments identifies various areas of interest in connection with the study. The notice is available on our website, where the information concerning the data call is also located, which is what you're seeing on the screen today. And requests for comments, if you're so inclined to provide those, are due May 3, 2024. Now, with respect to the data, however, because of that reporting deadline on our part to get a report out at the end of June, we are unable to extend the time for insurers responding to the data call beyond May 15th. So we do ask you to do your utmost to get the data in by then. As has been the case in prior years, we are doing separate webinars for each of the 4 reporting templates for small insurers, non-small insurers, alien surplus lines insurers, and captive insurers. This is the webinar addressing non-small insurers, which for purposes of this year are all insurance groups or insurance companies, if you are not part of a group of companies writing TRIP eligible lines insurance, that had in calendar year 2022 direct earned premium of $1 billion or more written in TRIP eligible lines, or alternatively, a policyholder surplus in that year of $1 billion or more. Given the terms of the 2019 reauthorization of TRIA, this threshold should now continue to remain the same at $1 billion for each measure until the current expiration date of the program in 2027. Keep in mind that if you are near the break point for premium purposes and are otherwise under the threshold for surplus, that certain premium allocated to lines for state reporting purposes is not TRIP eligible. And just as an example, some of the state commercial lines actually do include premium, personal lines premium, and I'm thinking fire in particular, the fire line, and probably more significantly in the other liability line, professional liability insurance falls within that, and that is not a TRIP eligible line. So, please make sure to evaluate that before concluding whether you should report on the small insurer form or the non-small insurer form. And of course, the non-small insurer reform does require the production of more information. Otherwise, we will be conducting this particular webinar based upon the requirements in the non-small insurer template, which we will be walking through today. If you determine that you, in fact, fall into the small insurer category, we will be holding a separate webinar focused on that template later this afternoon at 3:00 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, we will hold separate webinars for alien surplus lines insurers, and that is going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern, and captive insurers, which will be at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. The good news for everyone is this year's collection does not contain any material changes to the data reporting templates. There is a new model loss question for this year, as there is every year on the non-small insurer reinsurance worksheet, and I will speak to that when we get to that spreadsheet. Although, again, the question itself is similar to format in those that have been posed in prior years. Again, remember that reporting is on a group basis, which is how TRIP operates. You only report for an individual company if you are not affiliated with another company writing in the TRIP eligible lines of insurance. Also, keep in mind that any alien surplus lines insurers that are part of a group should be reporting with that group. So the only alien surplus lines insurers that should be reporting on the separate alien surplus lines template are those which are not affiliated with a non-small or small insurer group. The process for getting started here is pretty simple. You go to our website, and Sherry, I'd ask you to go ahead and click over to the main page. Sherry?
I just did.
I'm not seeing that on my screen.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So yeah, I mean, you can get to, you can go down a little bit. You can get to the reporting portal by clicking the link here, www.tripsection111data.com. And you can just enter it in separately as well. But if you click through there, go ahead and click that. And this is the registration portal, which you'll be familiar with if you've done this before. You do need to go in here and download the registration form, which you'll see at the bottom of the page. Yep, that page. You need to fill that out and then email it back to the address provided, trip111data@iso.com. And then the form itself has a point of contact listed. And once the form is processed, you will receive an email from ISO with a link to a secure portal that will contain your required reporting form. Once you complete the reporting form, you will send it back to ISO through that same secure portal. Although this is a consolidated data call, you will also separately need to submit your completed reporting form to the New York portal, and it's New York State that is operating that portal for state reporting purposes generally. The forms will be provided by ISO in Excel format. However, if you prefer to report using a CSV form of report, you can elect for that, and ISO will provide you with the specifications that allow you to report in that format instead. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over well, first to Mike McCauley and then to Aaron Brandenburg, just to let them give you a status update on where things stand on the reporting from their standpoint. Mike?
Thank you, Richard, and I will be very brief. Just a quick update as it relates to non-small insurers. All registrations received through end of business yesterday have been processed, and you should have received your credentials through a secure email in order to access your data templates through the SFTP accounts. If you have not or have experienced any issues accessing the secure email or accessing the SFTP account directly, I would ask that you contact us directly. It would be the same email address that is currently provided on the screen, tripsection111 data@iso.com. Which is highlighted. Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, and that's the basic update as it relates to the registration components at the moment.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Aaron, any updates from the state standpoint?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. As Richard mentioned, state regulators continue to work in conjunction with Treasury on this joint data call, with data from insurers being sent to both entities. So for state insurance regulators, that data will be sent to the New York State portal as in prior years. I would note we're still receiving final approval, so state regulators have not yet sent an email to company contacts as we have in prior years, but insurance companies should expect the process to be the same as in prior years, with files going to both entities, as I mentioned, that being the New York portal for state regulators. And I would just also note, we would ask that if you happen to refile your data set with Treasury, that you do so with state regulators through that New York portal and vice versa as well. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, Aaron. And just as a note, and this is in the instructions that sort of they go out on all the reporting. There are some different file names. While the forms are the same, you can basically, use the same forms to report. I think the New York portal requires the files to be labeled in one particular way, whereas we require different naming conventions on our end. So just pay attention to that when you finally get to submitting your information. And yes, as Aaron said, I mean, if you do, and this certainly can and does happen, if you do make corrections and resubmit to one portal, please make sure you do it. Basically make sure you've got the same data going into the other one as well. So, that's important to make sure we're getting the same stuff. I should know we will have the opportunity for questions on this webinar as well, which you'll be end up being able to submit through the chat mechanism on the on this webinar, which I will come to. So anyway, okay, moving on. Again, as was the case last year, if you write in the workers' compensation line, NCCI, the California WCIRB, and the New York Compensation Insurance Rating Board will actually report the workers' compensation fields in for those companies that report workers' compensation data to state regulators. And then when they do that, we merge that data into the data that is otherwise reported by companies. NCCI otherwise coordinates with the rating bureaus in the other states in which it does not operate, other than New York and California. So we will be getting comprehensive nationwide information. The one exception here, and this is really specifically for companies that sort of write only workers' compensation insurance, the bureaus do not and cannot register for the data call on your behalf, and nor can they complete separate questions concerning reinsurance related to workers' compensation exposures, which need to be completed by the insurer. So even though if you're a monoline comp insurer, you don't necessarily have that much to respond to here. However, you do need to register and fill in some of the fields that the rating bureaus do not do for you. And in addition, insurers still need to provide data for the excess workers' compensation line of coverage because NCCI and the rating bureaus do not have that information available to report in. So again, please, the real message here is you've got to register regardless, even though you can rely otherwise pretty heavily upon the rating bureaus to get your information in. Our main suggestion here is to review the instructions documents, and Sherry, go ahead and click back to well, here's the actual instruction document for the non-small reporting template. It's up on our website as well. Please look at that. It may answer many of the questions that you might have. Once you get through the general guidelines and information, it basically goes through on a cell-by-cell basis of the information that we're calling for with whatever information or hints we can provide as to what you should be doing there. It's certainly you'll see no changes in the instructions from last year. So, but it will give you I think a pretty good idea of what we're looking for on each one of those. Other sources of information, apart from this webinar, you can obtain help in response to a specific question you might have by emailing the TRIP section 111 data@iso.com address that is where your data gets submitted as well. If you send such an email seeking information or a question, you will either, one, get a written email response, two, get a call for ISO, or three, possibly even a call from us at Treasury. Alternatively, you can also contact Mike McCauley, Sherry Roulette, Annette Burris, or Ted Newman, or myself. And I guess, Sherry, if at some point during the webinar, or Annette, if you could put that contact information into the chat so that's there. But certainly if you email one of us, we can hopefully see that you can get information as well. So in addition to sort of upfront and personal contacts, we have then generated a sample answer document this year, which is on the website. Sherry, could you click back to the main page? There we go. And if you go down a little bit Keep going, keep going. You'll see, okay, nope, go back up. Okay, you'll see right there a selection of sample fact patterns is available for reference purposes. If you click through to that, it will give you a PDF document which sort of illustrates what I think might be sort of some of the more non-intuitive, some reporting on some of perhaps the more non-intuitive issues. So, well, it is there and it should work. So that's another way you can get some information concerning the webinar. There we go. And it actually walks through and gives you some various examples you can go to. The other thing that is available back on the main page, Sherry, and you can go back to there, we've made available on the main page a zip code listing, which is actually right above the fact patterns. That is useful in terms of responding to the questions on the geographic worksheet, which require responses for various metropolitan areas and that sort of thing. We've certainly heard that a lot of insurers, since they pull that information on a zip code basis, we've basically identified for you the zip codes associated with each of those areas, and that should be helpful in completing that worksheet. At this point, we're now going to go through each individual worksheet within the non-small insurer template. So go ahead and Sherry, you can click through to the non-small insurer form. There it is. And with some explanations as to what we are seeking and suggestions for completing each worksheet. We will then open it up to individual questions, which you can pose by going down on the Zoom menu on the webinar and submit through the chat mechanism, and go ahead and send that to Sherry Roulette, which means that only she will see who's asking the question, no one else will see, and then we'll sort of respond to those on an anonymous basis. You can do that throughout the webinar, and we will go through as many of those as we can as the webinar proceeds, and at the end, if we don't get to any, we'll certainly do them at the end. So, okay, we're now walking through the PDF versions of those reporting forms, and those are easier to present in this sort of format. Of course, once you register, you'll be getting, or you've already received, the live Excel versions of these sheets, which ISO actually tailors as necessary for each individual group based upon the forms it should complete, the jurisdictional worksheets it needs, etc. So again, you can do this through providing information with a CSV file, but you need to communicate directly with ISO for the specifications on that. What you're seeing here is the first worksheet, insurer group affiliations. This is simply to identify who you are. Again, reporting is on a group basis unless obviously you're a single company. We use NAIC codes or identity codes based either on a group and or company basis for tracking purposes. If you are an insurer that does not have such a number for whatever reason, ISO will assign a number to you for tracking purposes. If you have reported before, please use the same numbers for company and group identification that you have used in prior years. An individual company in the group that is an alien surplus lines insurer should use the number assigned to it by the International Insurers Department of the NAIC. Regarding the total 2022 policyholder surplus, and you'll see that's up in G, you will need to identify that for 2022, not 2023, which is what most of the data call here is, but for 2022 for the relevant entities based upon how you already report it for state statutory reporting purposes. Regarding the 2022 lines trip eligible DEP, which again is relevant as the measure of your 2023 calendar year deductible, you will need to rely upon that number when responding to questions on the reinsurance worksheet. Again, this is a figure you would have reported last year in sort of reporting all of your premium. If you reported a figure last year that you now believe to be an error based upon further evaluation, then please enter the revised number this year. We're obviously looking for you to put in the most correct number that you can. Separate instructions, which is back to the instruction form, but we don't need to go to that, address unusual situations for insurers that for whatever reason did not have any TRIP eligible lines premium in 2022 and thus might be tempted to enter zero in this field. In that situation, the program provides for essentially the assessment of a deductible based upon their TRIP eligible lines premium in the year in question, which here would be 2023. And if you are in this category, which could include newly formed insurers, that sort of thing, please look at the instructions, which provide information specifying what you should do. Bottom line is you should always have some a figure in there for your deductible. Moving on to the next sheet, the policy and premium by jurisdiction. Again, this is by relevant NAIC line or subline. The figures in columns E, F, and G should add up to the figure in column D. H is a figure for the actual terrorism risk premium charged, and it should be a subset of the total policy earned premium, which is identified in column G when a premium for that is being charged. When reporting premium, remember also that although the terrorism risk insurance premium is defined for the most part in terms of NAIC state reporting lines, there are some significant differences. Principally, lines 1 and 2, and that's fire and allied lines, include both commercial and personal lines coverage in some cases. And as TRIP only addresses commercial coverage, so if you are writing any personal lines coverage falling into those lines, that needs to be excluded from what you might otherwise report to state regulators. In addition, and this is probably the most significant one, professional and errors and omissions coverage is excluded from TRIP, even though for state purposes it all otherwise falls in the other liability reporting line. So again, you would need to exclude that from this report, even though it would fall within your other liability reporting for state reporting purposes. The instructions do identify the differences between the TRIP lines and the NAIC reporting lines, so please look at those if you have any questions. Again, remember, this is one of those sheets where if you write workers' compensation, those figures on this sheet will be reported in for you by NCCI, California WCIB, and the New York Bureau. So you don't need to fill those in, although you do need to fill in the excess workers' compensation, which is line 17.3 or line 14 on the Excel spreadsheet. Premium on this sheet should be entered on a direct earned basis for calendar year 2023, not written. Earned. TRIP is set up on an earned premium basis. So this means that if you have a policy that started before 2023 or ended after 2023, you will need to include only the premium earned in calendar year 2023 for that policy. If you have a policy that covers multiple states, the premium should be allocated to each state proportionally in the same manner as you would report it for state statutory reporting purposes. Now, there are some differences in the way policy count. You'll see then the number of policy columns to the right of the spreadsheet gets entered. Policy count should be based upon policies issued in 2023 and or still in effect on December 31, 2023. So a policy in effect from 1/1 through December 31, that's easy, that counts as one. If it was issued on June 1, 2022 and expired May 31, 2023, that gets counted as zero since it was not issued in 2023 and was not still in effect at the end of the year. On the other hand, a policy issued July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 would get counted as one since it was issued in 2023 and was still in effect at the end of the year. If you are writing policies in effect for multi-year periods that cover the entire year and they are still in effect on 12/31/2023, please count those as one. Policy count should be done by line in columns I through K, such that you will be double counting policies that cover multiple lines. So for example, if you have a policy that provides both fire and allied lines coverage, you will enter a policy count of 1 in each of those lines. On line 21, however, you should be providing the total number of policies containing TRIP eligible lines coverage, just in total, which will give us an accurate count of the total number of policies in the state. There will also be double counting, of course, double counting still across states if you have a policy that covers multiple states. In addition, each policy covering multiple states will get entered in each relevant state worksheet. And again, the worksheets you'll see, I mean, you can't see it on a PDF, but the Excel sheet you have, you will be entering in the data for each state with the drop-down menus that will be provided on the Excel spreadsheet. All right, I think that's it for this one. Sherry can go down to the next one, which is this is the standalone terrorism. This is on a nationwide, not state basis. This is actually obviously a pretty straightforward one. For comparative purposes, this does ask for information on terrorism coverage for both policies for Treasury certified acts certified by Treasury and covered by TRIP. However, if you also write standalone coverage for acts of terrorism that are not certified by Treasury, we ask you to report that here. Otherwise, this is a pretty straightforward and simple worksheet. We don't actually see many problems with the reporting on this one year over year. So next sheet. Okay, this starts with the cyber reporting worksheets for cyber risks. Although there were a number of expanded areas of inquiry introduced for the first time in the 2022 data call for this worksheet, the categories or reporting methodology have not changed in this year. So it is the same as you would have reported last year, assuming you did report last year. As in prior years, we are continuing to seek information on both standalone cyber policies, that's the information requested in column C, as well as cyber endorsements attached to another policy or what would be referred to as a package policy, and that gets reported in column D, and of course everything automatically totals up in column E. You should not provide any information on so-called non-affirmative or silent cyber coverage, assuming you still have policies that potentially might provide such coverage. And again, that's where a policy might cover some sort of cyber loss because cyber is not specifically excluded in the policies. Again, this is solely for policies where cyber coverage is being affirmatively written. Lines 3 to 6, 8 to 9, and 18 to 19 request information concerning premium, number of policies, and limits for cyber policies in the TRIP eligible lines of insurance. That's been requested since we began collecting cyber insurance information. And again, you should continue to respond to those questions as you have in prior years. Lines 7, 10, and 20 request the same information concerning premium, number of policies, and limits, but that's as applied to cyber policies written in non-TRIP eligible lines of insurance. While the information is the same sort of information as we have requested in the past, we did expand it in 2022 to policies written in non-TRIP eligible lines so that we can assess the amount of cyber insurance that is currently not subject to the program. Our understanding is that this is largely cyber insurance that is currently being coded characterized and otherwise reported for state purposes as professional liability insurance, which remains subject to an exclusion under TRIA. These questions, assuming you write policies in this fashion, should be answered in the same way as you have already been responding to the questions for policies written in the TRIP eligible lines. Also beginning in 2022, we started requesting certain categories of information as allocated by policies issued by the size of the policyholder, and that's for small, medium, and large policyholders. And we permit the report, which we started doing for the first time last year. We permit you to report that either by the number of employees of the policyholder, and that's specified on the worksheet here. Looks like small is under 100 employees, medium 101 to 500, large over 500. Or you can do it by revenue, where the figures are, I'll have to, by what's under 10 million in revenue, 10 to 100 million in revenue, or over 100 million in revenue. We're continuing that approach this year as well. You can choose either way to report it. You can't do a mixture. So if you want to report by number of employees, that's fine. By revenue, that's fine. Don't do a mix. And the way we track that is by the file naming convention. Mike, could you speak to that briefly, just so folks see that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the registration process, every reporting entity does receive SFTP instructions, and we provide the appropriate guidance as to how to address this. So the initial cyber workbook that you will receive will have the letter Z as part of the naming convention. If you're reporting based on number of employees, all you will have to do is replace the Z with an E, versus if you're reporting based on revenue, replace the Z with an R. And that will help us identify whether you're reporting based on number of employees or the revenue component. And that's all included within the instructions subsequent to registration.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Okay, moving further down the form, you'll see there's some questions concerning limits specific to cyber extortion and ransom payments. What we're seeking to distinguish here is between coverage for cyber extortion generally, which obviously can include a number of policy benefits apart from the actual payment or reimbursement of an actual ransom payment, versus, if there are separate limits for the actual ransom payment. To the extent there's no distinction here, I mean, just as if you've got one cyber extortion limit and it's available generally for any payments within that category, then you would simply report the same limit. Again, what we're trying to get at is if there's some sublimit that applies to the ransom payment versus the coverage payment generally. And this information is being requested separately as between policies in TRIP versus non-TRIP eligible lines. And finally, the last category here, loss information specific to cyber extortion and ransom payment, is respected for all cyber policies combined, whether in the TRIP eligible lines or not. Questions seek paid and incurred amounts for cyber insurance, cyber extortion generally, and paid amounts for ransom payments, along with the number of claims such ransom payments are associated with. Finally, direct defense amounts for cyber extortion generally, without any effort to segregate that to ransom payments specifically, are sought again on a paid and incurred basis. We can respond to any further questions you may have at the end of the prepared remarks, and also take specific questions on a direct basis if you would like to contact us separately on this worksheet. Next one, moving down, exposure by jurisdiction. Again, also these are using the NAIC reporting lines or sublines. We're asking you to identify the exposures covered by and not covered by TRIP. The point is to calculate the actual total potential exposure under the policy in both cases. The idea is what is the most you might have to pay under the policy in question. This worksheet also requests for both the property and liability exposures the specific identification of terrorism policy limits where NBCR risks are not entirely excluded. Thus, in column D for property, you are requested to identify the property limits of terrorism risk insurance generally, while in column E, it is requested you identify those same limits where NBCR coverage is not entirely excluded. So column E should presumably be a subset of the figure identified in column D, or at least no more than the figure in column D, assuming you don't entirely exclude NBCR risks in any policy. When responding there, report that limits are available if the policy provides terrorism risk insurance for any NBCR exposures, even if some exposures, so for example, if a policy excludes nuclear, but it covers, for example, chemical or radiological risks, you would report that limits are provided there. If otherwise, though, you've got blanket exclusions for NBCR risks or CBRN risks, depending on what acronym you prefer. If you've totally excluded it, then you would, not report any limits. You would essentially report no limits there. If the only NBCR coverage provided is on account of the application of so-called fire following laws in certain states, please report that no coverage is provided. We're looking for what, your policy provides here, as opposed to, what requirements may be otherwise mandated by state insurance law. You will see here that information is also requested on policyholder deductibles or self-insured retentions, which should be reported in connection with primary level policies that reference such a deductible or SIR. And you'll see that's column F and then column K for the column F for property, column K for liability. Don't report anything if you're dealing with an excess policy there, and I mean excess above a primary level. Don't report any of those obligations there, or essentially we get double counting. We're really looking for the reporting there by a primary insurer that has some sort of SIR or deductible obligation associated with the policyholder, and not the higher level excess coverage. For policies which contain multiple deductibles or SIRs by jurisdiction, depending upon the property, location, or operation, use the lowest deductible or SIR by state. Similarly, for the US worksheet as a whole, again, use the lowest deductible or SIR. There are some differences here in the way exposure information is calculated as compared to premium and policy count above. And again, we're not here, there's no allocation being required here as we do with premium. That would obviously be, I think, too complicated. What we're asking here for exposure is that the exposure metrics should be reported on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis and enter the relevant limits for each jurisdiction, even if an aggregate limit might cap your exposure across multiple jurisdictions. So for example, if you had $1 million policy covering California and Oregon, you report $1 million of exposure on both the California and Oregon worksheets, even though there may be an overall limit of $1 million for the policy as a whole. For that same policy on the US worksheet, there you would provide figures for the United States as a whole that are not multiplied by the issue of limits applying in multiple jurisdictions. So here you would apply any aggregates that might apply, and again, otherwise respond on a single occurrence basis, assuming there are no policy aggregates. And again, in the example I previously provided, you would report $1 million as the overall U.S. exposure for that policy. For purposes of this worksheet, apply the exposure figures as they existed for policies in force as of 12/31/2023. So this is a little different from the policy count worksheet, which would also include policies issued in 2023 but expiring before December 31, 2023. If a policy ends before 12/31/2023, for purposes of this exposure worksheet, you would enter a 0. In addition, on this worksheet, you'll see there's workers' compensation fields for the workers compensation line. Payroll information will be reported by the rating bureaus. However, that is not the case with respect to excess workers' compensation. So you would need to report in the payroll for that. Moving to the next sheet. This is the policyholder industry code. Here we're asking you to classify property premium by your choice of NAICS, SIC, or other codes, which include ISO class codes if you use those. Note that the workers' compensation fields will be completed again by the rating bureaus using the separate NCCI coding system. We understand that there can be hundreds of codes within the general categories. You can provide the specific code where available, and ISO will aggregate this information into the more general categories as needed for our analysis. You will note here under each, we do have a uncoded or unavailable category. We didn't put this in here to allow everything to be reported in this field, but we do recognize that there may be some, hopefully small amount of information that you're not in a position to code by category of policyholder in this level of detail. So that is a possibility, but obviously we would hope you could otherwise classify this by the codes, and that seems to have been the case in the reporting for the last 3 or 4 years at this point. If you are planning on reporting based upon a coding system other than NAICS or SIC, you can use that other system, but you will need to coordinate with ISO in connection with the information you provide to make sure that we can allocate it or match it up correctly. Next page, Sherry. Okay, this is the places of worship worksheet. It's very similar to the policyholder industry code worksheet that we just discussed. Basically seeks the same premium elements. Like that worksheet, is also on a nationwide basis and seeks information in general categories of property, liability, and workers' comp. However, on this worksheet, we are only seeking information on policies written for places of worship. Where you are reporting this data, please do your best to only report on coverage related to actual houses of worship while excluding any affiliated religious organizations such as hospitals or schools. You will see that we asked you to report this information under specific industry codes, and that's based on our assessment. Those are the codes that most accurately relate to those exposures. Again, you can do this under either the NAICS reporting system, the SIC reporting system, or ISO class codes. If you can report based on one, not multiple, just pick one of these metrics, please do so. If you cannot, but have some other way in which to extract the information, such as, for example, a policyholder name search, please do that. We do not have a category here for unavailable because we are specifically seeking data for places of worship. So please find some way in which to report actual or estimated information and policyholders within this category. This was an express request by Congress in the 2019 Reauthorization Act, so we have to get the information. Again, for the workers' compensation elements, NCCI, California WCIRB, and the New York Bureau can provide that information. So if you can do that, but they wouldn't, yeah, they will provide the information on this worksheet. Sherry, next sheet. This is the geographic exposures worksheet. Think of this as requesting the same sort of information that is requested by AM Best on its terrorism questionnaire. Geographic descriptions are the same as those used by AMS. Again, as I mentioned at the outset, to aid in the reporting on this, we have also generated a complete list of zip codes for each of the jurisdictions listed on the worksheet. So just as you go down here, you'll see we define Chicago, Illinois as basically Cook, DuPage, Lake, and no, I can't even see that. What the counties making up Chicago. But on that, on the Excel sheet, you will actually find all of the zip codes associated with those counties. So if it's easier for you to basically pull the information by zip code, that's the way you can do that. Otherwise, I mean, look, you know, this isn't a test. We're looking for best information. Please use your best approximation of those areas to report your information. Again, the workers' compensation fields here, you'll see that's column D, will be completed by NCCI, California WCRB, and New York Bureau, but not column E for the excess workers' comp. So you would need to fill that out if you write that information. Again, there is an unavailable field here entered as well. So if you can't do the allocation, you know, that you can put that information in there. The questions on, and then Sherry, go ahead and scroll down a little bit. The questions on page 10, keep going down a little further. Actually, one more. Sorry, that was 9. Page 10. Okay, yeah, page 10. We're seeking here aggregations by zip code. So here it is all exposures within a particular zip code where your exposures aggregate, and then please rank order them as requested. By contrast, and if you scroll down a little further to lines 49 and 50, Sherry, yeah, 49 and 50, that's basically where we're asking you to report to us what your probable maximum loss for a particular location, not for a zip code as a whole. So for that one, we want you to basically tell us where is the largest exposure you have, and obviously what is it, and where is the zip code in which that falls. So, you know, that should be pretty straightforward. Moving on to the last worksheet, you'll be happy to hear the reinsurance worksheet. Again, this one is seeking information about your private third-party reinsurance protection. Do not include any intra-company arrangements you may have in place that you may do for, you know, allocating risk within the company, within the group. You need to, we're really looking for just third-party reinsurance that you're getting placed through unaffiliated entities. On this sheet, there you will see there are some specific workers' compensation questions. The rating bureaus do not have that information for you, so you do need to report all the workers' compensation elements on this worksheet. We asked for information here as well for concerning Nat Cat reinsurance. We do this for comparative purposes against to compare it against your terrorism risk reinsurance. Note that on line 26, there's any other reinsurance exclusions that might apply relating to terrorism, apart for domestic and foreign exclusions that might exist. This is meant to capture such situation as if there are exclusions relating to risks at particular locations or within particular metropolitan areas. For this worksheet, we strongly recommend that if you have an individual responsible for reinsurance in your company, you should forward that worksheet to them for completion, as this will help ensure the accuracy of the data we receive. When responding to this worksheet, we need for you to enter actual figures for the various fields. And this is a problem for us every year. We understand reinsurance programs are complex. Sometimes we get responses that basically say, see a attached spreadsheet or chart. That doesn't help us. We really need you to enter numbers in these fields. Please enter in. I mean, the problem with getting a sheet like that, it is very difficult for us to aggregate that. We really need you to basically put in, basically pick the best number you have as to what represents your insurance coverage and enter that. Or the lowest number where you're at the lowest place where your reinsurance would attach. We can't have, basically we just end up getting a blank if you basically say it's all over the place and we can't give you a number, even though we show you the chart. So please give us your best figure on that. If you got any questions about that, please direct them to either Treasury or to ISO. Now, moving down to keep going. This is the model loss question, which we do every year. Basically, the scenario is set forth in the first field, and then it goes down to the actual information we want you to generate in connection with that. What we're asking you to do is take the event that we've described here and then divide it into the identified categories in lines 31 to 36, and that will automatically populate into line 30. So, and the categories are the insured's deductible. So that's basically deductible or retention obligations under the policies that are triggered. The insurance company's net trip deductible. That is, you have a deductible under TRIP, which is basically 20% of your prior year premium, and that needs to be paid by either you or a reinsurer if you have reinsurance for that. We're asking you in that field to report whatever your net exposure is. The next line is the reinsurance you have within that deductible layer. So if that trip deductible of 20% is going to be satisfied to some extent by private reinsurance, that gets reported there. Line 34, this is the amount you would get to claim from the government. That's basically take the total loss, deduct the insured's portion, deduct your net trip deductible, deduct what the reinsurers are paying in that, and then you pay, the government would pay 80% of that balance figure. And then the last two lines, the insurer would still have a copay obligation of 20% in that area above your trip deductible, and that would be divided between what you are holding net as well as what you might have private reinsurance for. So I'm trying to, the total loss, the total projected loss figure, it's not the total loss estimate from the event as a whole. So for example, if you're running some sort of model which gives you a figure for what's the total loss associated with the event in question, just over the entire spectrum, total economic loss for the entire country, don't put that figure in there. We're asking you to basically look at your portfolio, identify the policies that could be triggered for this. Those would be the policies where people actually bought terrorism risk insurance, and it provides coverage for this. And that's what we're asking you to report on and provide that information. And again, once that figure is calculated and what comes in under the policies, that's the figure that goes in line 30, and then it basically gets allocated in lines 30 to 36 as indicated based on the various categories: policyholder, trip deductible, trip claim, trip copay share. So again, don't provide any information about estimated losses for policyholders that didn't take up terrorism risk insurance. This year's scenario is a little different. It focuses on a particular location in Atlanta, Georgia, involving a dirty bomb blast at a specific street location. We provide the GPS location coordinates for that there. It should be considered to be a single event for trip purposes. We do provide a suggested dispersal area for the contaminants. I mean, basically, it's not a large physical blast area, so it's 100 pounds of TNT. If you actually had risks literally right at the point where the bomb goes off, you could have some physical losses there if you had coverage applicable there. But it's really looking mostly for the effects of the dispersal of the dirty bomb contaminants over that area, which we describe. We've tried to describe it in a way that we think it could disperse. We are not 100% wedded to that, but we have defined an area that's basically going out about 10 kilometers from the blast site in an area to the north and northeast. If you have a different way of estimating that, we're not, you can certainly do that, but basically we're asking you to evaluate your losses in that zone as generally described within there. Doesn't need to be exact. It's a sort of guidance for where we're thinking the losses would potentially happen and where there might be impacts. So that's where we're asking you to take a look. In terms of guidance on here, I mean, look, we understand a lot of policies might exclude MBCR related risks. We would think, generally speaking, if you have comp exposures within this area, those obviously cannot be excluded. So you would be in a position, we would think you would be in a position to model that and provide some estimates on that. Regarding property exposures, as I said, obviously the physical damage losses would probably be pretty limited in an area very close to the blast site within the general zone of impact. However, if you had policies that, actually covered cleanup, we would ask you to estimate that. We suspect that may not be that significant, but if you had policies that covered business interruption that might be associated with potential, shutdown of an area there based on, this event, and that was not fully excluded from your policy, then, we would ask you to put an estimate in there for that, even if, the modeling programs you might use do not, measure that. But basically, look at your portfolio. Obviously, if it's totally excluding any true property loss, whether cleanup or business interruption, then you would not enter any information in there. If you believe there would be the capacity for some coverage there, we're asking you to put in some estimates for that. So I think with that, I've covered everything on here. I am happy to take some questions. And obviously we're obviously, I do want to emphasize this. If you have any questions as you're going through this, please do not hesitate to reach out. I mean, one of the first emails I respond to every day is if somebody has a question on how to respond to something, we try to get an answer for you as quickly as possible. So we do try to make this as understanding this. Certain aspects of this can be difficult. So as much help as we can provide, we are happy to do that. But are there any questions, Sherry? Are there any questions that we need to respond to at this point?
I see one question in the chat, possibly zip code listing has the year of 2022 in the name.
Yes.
Yeah,
that we didn't change the file name. Basically, we came to the conclusion that there was not any, those have been the same zip code groupings that we've used since 2022. And basically, based on our sort of analysis of the crosswalk stuff on zip codes, nothing has significantly changed. So we're basically using the same file. So it does have a 2022 22 name on it, but yes, you should use that for purposes of this year's data call. Any other questions? All right, I'm assuming that means everybody is fully, everybody's got the hang of this at this point. This is the 8th or 9th year we've been doing this, and I have to say the reporting has been, I think, has been getting better year over year. I think we have tried to keep it as consistent year over year, and we do see that in the results. They do make sense year over year for the most part. I mean, obviously the sheets that have probably changed the most in the last 2, 3, 4 years have been the cyber ones. Obviously there's a lot going on in cyber now. Again, if you have any questions on that, please let us know. Again, happy to assist on that. But other than that, I don't have anything else, and we have no other questions. Sherry, I'm gonna say we can turn off the tape, and we'll get this posted on the website as soon as we can. And